Okay, we're live. Let's
Yes.
see how this works out. So, welcome to the Roundtable, and we're going to title this episode "The Battle of the Free Marketeers." So, in order to do so, we have raised I would call a very prestigious cast. We've raised our resident Austrian economist, Jalil Javed,
Hello. Hello, everyone.
and I was walking down the street and I wasn't sure who I was going to get as a partner, and then this guy came up to me. He was so good to help us. I mean, he rose himself from the dead just to come on this podcast. People welcome Clement Attlee.
Hello, everyone. Even though my accent is not so good, like Clement Attlee, real
Don't
accent,
worry.
but
Don't worry about
still.
I mean, being a Zionist spy does tend to do this to you. Anyway, so leaving all the jokes aside, this will be a debate between a Keynesian economist and an Austrian. And we're going to debate, well, not debate, more discuss several questions referring to the free market.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay. So, Jalil, would you like to ask the first question?
You mentioned something about the market in Chile only getting better after 1982.
1982, yes. It's still
Okay.
the age of Pinochet. It's still his age, but there was actually a transition that some people don't understand. There was the first initial era, the Chicago Boys era, monetarist era of Milton Friedman, from 1973 until 1982, which ended in actually when the Latin American debt crisis of 1982 started. And Chile actually was, the hit on Chile was the hardest between all the Latin American economies, countries. So yes, I mean, yes, continue your
Yeah,
question.
I'll have to disagree with you on that because I think that by the time the coup happened in '73, the situation in Chile was so bad. Inflation had turned into hyperinflation, and
Yes,
the currency inflation and everything, the level of unemployment, everything. It was so bad that to give credit to all the students of Friedman who went there and helped Pinochet with restoring the economy because the economy was already so bad. When you have such a controlled economy as Salvador Allende had, it's hard to say that it was the Chicago school of thought that helped them around because even if they had a controlled state capitalist government, even then the economy would have improved because
well,
the situation was very terrible at the time of after Salvador Allende had implemented his nationalizing policies. Because the problem is that, excuse me a second, just wait a second.
So, anyway, Clement, tell us a bit about your work.
which walk about what?
Well, you claim to be an economist.
Yes, of course, I do.
Tell us a bit about your views on the economy.
It depends actually on, it's varies and things, but actually, yes, I'm now currently a student of economics, and my views are actually something that our views are heterodox. I mean, there is the orthodox views of economics, which basically are the neoclassical. Why Jalil is muted? Anyway, okay. So,
Fair
hey,
enough.
the views are that basically are taught in mainstream academia is neoclassical views. It's views that was developed basically after in the 20th century, starting with Alfred Marshall. Actually, Austrian views are also heterodox in a different direction from post-Keynesian views. My views are basically part of the post-Keynesian school. There is actually a pretty famous branch, MMT, Modern Monetary Theory. I think even you guys could hear about it. It's have kind of controversial views. Controversy.
Just moderately.
Yes,
Very
but
rare.
yes.
Okay,
So,
so now that
but
we've had that, Julie, would you like to explain your views?
Okay,
yes, continue.
the thing is, My problem with, can I start with my problem with Keynesianism?
I would rather you actually state your views first, then tell me your
Okay,
problem
so
with Keynesianism.
We actually, yes, we actually, as we said, we had a conversation about Chile. But
Yes,
okay,
but
present yourself,
yeah,
present yourself.
we'll finish this quickly so that people actually understand where everyone's coming from.
Yes.
I think the thing is that we both agree that things were bad under Allende. I mean, we all agree that the socialist policies of Allende would never have worked in Chile, because the only natural resource Chile had was copper, and nationalizing copper is not going to make you a lot of money.
Look, I want to
So
take, if we speak about, okay, I can answer or not. If we speak about Allende, Salvador Allende, was a problem with him. I agree with you. I mean, he was not a Keynesian, he was a Marxist. We have to remember that Allende was a Marxist, and he planned to transition the economy not to more social democratic or Keynesian economy. Basically what I call big government capitalism. He was not a man of big government capitalism. He was a man of central planned economy, Allende. And I disagree with central planned economy. I will tell you more. My parents came from the Soviet Union, so I know exactly how, sorry for my language, fucked up central planned economy is. Centrally planned economy is. So I not disagree with you that the path that Allende wanted for Chile is really bad path. And I can agree with you that if we speak about that, basically the coup of Pinochet maybe saved Chile from centrally planned economics. But you can, basically, you can cure bad policies in different ways.
yeah,
I mean, if you want to cure policy or bad policy, you can cure it in different ways. If there is a bad ideology, you can cure it in different ways. I mean, you can cure sickness in different ways. I mean, you can kill the disease by killing the person, and in this way, it's not really useful. So basically, we have to understand that I disagree with Allende, and I disagree, like Jalil, and you disagree with Allende. I don't think that the recipes of the Chicago Boys were good for Chile, and there were different paths to take in order to rescue Chile from central planned economics and to actually make the Chilean economy grow. The same policies which have been implemented after 1982. If we're speaking about it, there's the least known facts about Chile, about the second Pinochet rule. I mean, the transition.
second one, yeah.
The second
Okay.
is the basic. You want to say? Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Here's the thing. Yeah, I agree with you. I would disagree with you on saying that Allende was all Allende wanted was a centralized government. I mean, to a certain extent, even Keynesianism endorses a central government. Don't you think?
Keynesian are basically things that the market need the support of the government, and the market need to be regulated. There is even a case for some nationalization of, let's say, water supply. Because it's like a basic, it's talked about as a basic good or electricity supply. You can nationalize for a short time even industrial enterprises, but it's in order to help support and develop them, not in order to make a central planned economy, because it's going against capitalism, and Keynesians are still capitalists. As I say, I always say that I'm a big government capitalist, but I'm still a capitalist. And I never wanted to transition to centrally planned economics. Yes, continue.
Yeah. So the thing is, you mentioned the Chicago Boys. As and look, we all know Allende's policies changed very radically after he got elected. We have to remember he was elected democratically, like people chose him, and he was a very radically socialist kind of a guy, and
Yes, yes, I
he,
agree.
he nationalized everything. And there's there is this kind of saying that he promised everyone that he would send a bottle of wine to their houses, but he didn't know how to pay for them. And that is true, to be honest, because Chile does not have the kind of natural resources that can be used that can be nationalized, so that you have a government where, so for example, the nationalization of the Suez Canal. Now that's understandable because that's going to bring money for the government, the Egyptian government, and Nasser planned it through because that gave money to the Egyptian government, which he then put into social programs. I mean, he was an Arab socialist. Gaddafi. I mean, we can debate their other merits later, but they nationalized oil because they used oil as a force for spending on their centralized government. Now, they also use centralized governments, but their centralized governments work because during the oil boom, Libya made a lot of money, Egypt made a lot of money, but Chile did not have this kind of oil. Small
Chile
coastal
did not.
country west of the Andes.
Jalil,
So
I'd like to interject. Sorry, can we keep this to the actual issue of Chile and please not go into
yeah,
the Middle
so
East?
Chile. No, just giving an example. I'm sorry. Anyway, so Chile is just a small country on the western coast of the Andes. So they did not have the natural resources to have a good central economy. That's why Andes policies did not work. And by the time
Uh,
Pinochet came in, the economy is in such bad condition. It is hard for us to understand how well the policies of the Chicago Boys played out, or how well the second junta after 1982 played out. So I think
Look,
there is no gray area. Yeah,
we can actually make assessment of what happened there, and I can answer you about this case with some civilizations and if it's good or bad. But first, we can actually check what happened in 1973 until 1982. There
yeah,
was indeed a problem, we know. But first of all, don't need to forget two things about even the copper and something that happened in times of Allende. In times of Allende, we should not basically forget the role of the United States with
oh
their
yeah,
the United States actually, and I'm not justifying Allende. As you know, I mean, I want just to say something that is not related, but sometimes I write about Venezuela, but I never, approve Chavez or something. Of course not. I don't think they did a good policy. It's the same here. Allende, yes, he did bad policies. He basically, the policies of Allende are not good. But as we know now, and as we know from the records of the Senate, American Senate,
yeah,
the Americans in purpose fuel the crisis more. They create situations where the inflation will be higher by basically sanction the sales of copper, which basically copper is one of the main industries of Chile.
yeah,
They forced
yeah,
another Western countries to embargo Chile's copper, and they forced them into serious
yeah,
trade
exactly.
deficit. And if we think about it, they don't allow the IMF to help Chile without basically, without Chile kneel and begging US for help. So we shouldn't forget that partial problem of the regime was American intervention with Chile situation, and we shouldn't forget the fact that actually American companies ruled the copper industry in Chile, and in time they ruled the copper industry in Chile. They forced the Chileans to sell copper less than twice than the price in the international market.
Yeah,
So here is a lot of problems which we can see from United States policies, which
yeah,
to our Chile. And yes, so that's the situation which basically Allende was in. Now, of course, I'm not saying that Allende, I'm not saying that Allende did something good with his policies, but when we speak about Pinochet rule, the first phase of his rule was basically that when he started to implement his policies, the unemployment went up, the income inequality soared. There was a rapid growth in income inequality. There was a rapid growth in unemployment. There was basically stagnating society, stagnating economy. The economy started be in even worse situation than before. Even though the inflation was taken under control, but it was taken under control by really crazy basically means by basically losing capital controls. I mean, actually, it's going against it, but okay. They basically lifted capital controls and instead tried to put on like 300% interest rates, central bank interest rates on the Chilean. I don't know what is the currency in Chile. I'm sorry, and never
I
mind.
think
Yes.
peso, I don't know. Never mind.
Okay, Chilean peso, I don't know, but they put something like 300% interest rates, which forced many companies into bankruptcy. We are speaking about a situation where the Chilean miracle was not actually a miracle. It was actually a serious recession, which
Yeah.
happened in Chile. Chile started to basically somehow grow in 1978 when IMF convinced Pinochet to lift all financial regulation. They did this, and basically there was a financial bubble. If we, from our perspective currently, we know actually it was a big financial bubble, which basically, as we also know, in 1982, this bubble caused the greatest crisis from all order, greatest crisis in Latin America. Chile had the worst consequences of this crisis, felt
Yeah.
the worst consequences of the crisis. So if we speak about this period of the experiments with radical neoliberalism, I don't see how it's actually worked well. I don't see where is the miracle. I see more that Friedman basically told a beautiful story, but actually the story had nothing to do with the facts. But after 1982, people who took control after it, we can call them basically right-wing developmentist Keynesians. Yes, right-wing conservative Keynesians took control. They started from resuming capital controls. They even nationalized most of the industries. Of course, they privatized them later. But if they was not doing it, if they was listening to the advices of Milton Friedman and give them to go bankrupt, those businesses, then a lot of Chile industry today will be in ruins. I don't think that Chile could ever recover really well from this. Instead, they nationalized this. Of course, later they basically privatized it again. They basically just got all the losses on the government, and they raised the tariffs from 10% to 40%. They raised the tariffs on goods. Basically, they started to use fiscal stimulus, budget deficit in order to create environment of full employment.
Yeah.
After the Chile started to recover. And we shouldn't forget the role of the copper industry. The copper industry was not privatized by Pinochet. I mean, maybe it was privatized, as I remember, for 1-2 years, but later the nationalists again. And they used the revenues. Yes.
I think the reason that he renationalized the copper industry was because of the blowback rates that the US was forcing Chile to sell their copper at. I think Chilean copper was being sold at half the international market price.
Yes, but I'm not speaking about Allende, I'm speaking about Pinochet. He privatized it for a time, but then he nationalized it again.
The reason he nationalized it again after 2 years was because I think, and this is just my opinion, I think because he wasn't a big fan of US intervention as well. So he thought that renationalizing it, but not as radically as Allende had done, with a proper decentralized, nationalized copper market, so that the US could not take advantage of their industry anymore. And you are right, I agree. The reason he renationalized it was to
He
get
used
rid
their
of the
yes.
to get
I just want to
to get
yes.
rid of the US regulations and other half price sellings. I agree with you on that one, but look, here's the thing. Milton Friedman was no great guy. I mean, on some issues, I think Friedman was basically his economic policies were evil, to be honest, in some circumstances, because he he thought of corporations as human beings. That's what he did. That's why I endorse the Austrian model of economics much better. You know, socialists say that people should have control over everything. Well, if you read what Hayek says, some of what his gold standard is that the the inefficiency in corporations comes when the jobs become the ends, not the means, and that's when people start to work for things that they don't want in their life, and they're not working to live better. They're just working to put food on their tables. That's outside of the gold standard, and that happens in Keynesian economics because of debt, and debt happens because of spending, because of government intervention, and because of the flat currency that is caused by the boom and bust economic cycle that Keynesianism creates. That's why I
We
endorse.
Okay, so if you don't mind, Clement, so we're going to move into the second question now, which is that a
can I
question
just
of,
want to finish something small one
Yeah,
go
yeah,
ahead.
sure.
about Chile. Something small. Look, I want to say something interesting about the copper industry. The revenues of the copper industries was used by an agency which basically helped a lot of businesses in Chile to be established. Businesses that related to agriculture, businesses related to service sector, which are still really prosperous today. So there is sometimes there is a rationale to nationalize some key industries in order to
Yeah,
help develop others.
if your
Okay, so now
country
we'll move on,
has oil
Jalil.
reserves,
We can
etc.
move on.
So the second
Yeah.
question refers to the question of debt and government spending.
Yes.
So since Clement started the last one, Julie, would you like to start this one?
So my simple gripe with government spending is I would like to start. Just give me a minute, and I'll tell you. One of the main things that the Austrian school preaches is that after World War II, the US found a very good means of continuing spending, because uh, uh, Keynes had realized after the Great Depression that one way of making sure that the US economy doesn't bust completely is to make sure that government spending keeps flowing. You know, there are different pipes inside the government, and if you keep the spending juices flowing, the government will not bust. So, and
Okay,
how did he
Clement.
he realized that? Because during World War II, businesses were there was full employment because everyone was working in the factories or in the military or in the navy, and businesses were booming because of all the spending on war. So that's why Keynes, I think government spending in Keynesianism, there is a term called war Keynesianism. So that's why Keynesianism in terms of government spending relies on war. It has always relied on war, and just like Ron Paul said, as long as we have a government interventionist policy with huge spendings, we cannot end wars.
Okay, I want to answer this question. The problem here and why actually Keynesian related to war is because conservatives don't allow to spend enough in order to basically create prosperity and full employment in order times. The only times that conservatives allow to spend I mean, budget deficit, to do budget deficits in order to create full employment. If we leave aside the short period that called today, they called the age of capitalism between 1950 and 1973, is in period of war. If we speak, that's why sometimes Keynesianism relates to war, because conservatives, and in this case, I basically put the neoliberal Democrats and New Labour, New Democrats, and another left-wing types that actually are neoliberals in the same camp with conservatives. They don't allow basically the country to spend enough in order to create good jobs for people, good paying jobs, so they will be able to pursue their happiness in life, as it was written in the American Constitution. So what basically I want to say is that basically we currently have one quasi gold standard in the world. There is one region in the world that actually have quasi gold standard, even to its fiat, but by the how it imposes on governments, if it can spend or not. There is one region like this. It's called the Eurozone, and we see the consequences of the Eurozone. Greece, 20% unemployment. It still have negative growth. It's have problems. Portugal, Italy, almost all the countries except maybe Germany, which actually control it, are suffering from this quasi gold standard. Normal countries, if Greece had drachma, it could basically spend itself out of depression. But because it's have no drachma, and it's relying on Germany and on the ECB, European Central Bank, to create enough money in order to spend. Yes.
I'd just like to step in. I have a quick question, because you've kind of piqued my interest now about something. How do you feel about the Irish recovery, since we're talking about the ECB and the current written countries?
Yes, the Irish recovery basically is based on, as we said, on the race to the bottom. You heard about this?
Elaborate for everyone.
Okay, race to the bottom is basically the ideas that, basically how corporations do mostly. They try to find places where the taxation is lower in order to record their operations there. For example, there is many corporations that now go to Ireland and move their the financial corporations
financial assets.
They say that they are Irish company now. They move themselves, not the operations. The operations stay in other countries, but they Irish company.
You mean they re-register in Ireland?
Yes, re-register it in Ireland in order to basically avoid higher taxation. And Ireland basically is one of the big tax havens in the world. Yes, I know tax haven is not exactly the right proper definition, because everything is clear. It's not that they are hiding from accountants around the world what they're doing, like a proper tax haven, but they're using their low taxation in order to get more companies registered there. And look, for one country it may be helpful, but if all other countries in European Union or in the world will try to do the same strategy, it will be self-defeating. It's beggar thy neighbor strategy and policy.
I just want to make one little observation, because I actually do pretty much agree with you on that fundamental analysis, but I always love to point out Ireland is not the lowest tax country in the EU.
No, it's not.
It's not even the lowest corporation tax country in the EU.
It's one of the lowest corporation tax, but of course, except it's one of them. There is not 6% if my memory is
13.5.
I heard they want to make it 6%, but anyway, yes, there is Macedonia and some other countries which have initial weaker economy and initial weaker institutions, post-communist countries. Actually, as we can see from Macedonia, for example, this country is not it's having not really good economic recovery. It still have something like 20% unemployment, if I not forget, if my memory is not is okay.
But Macedonia isn't, well, the former Yugoslav Republic of Macedonia is not in the European Union.
It's not in the European Union. I'm sorry for my mistake, but it's in
I do
Europe.
know the country you're referring to, and it's Bulgaria, which
I
has
think
10%.
It's
can I
Bulgaria, yes. I'm sorry. Okay, it's true. Yes, Greece don't allow them to become part of the EU until they will change their name. Yes,
It's
yes,
a
I
small
remember.
bit of autistic screeching going on about that.
Yes, yes. Wait a second. Wait a
I
second.
just want to add something while we're on it. This, these Slavic people, they love making a lot of history. They
Yes.
make,
Well,
they surely
Ireland
make
is
more
not.
history than they can swallow.
Ireland is not. Maybe it's not the least taxed place. Hong Kong is, by the way, neither the least taxed place for corporations, but there still is a hub. And if we speak about, there's networking effects. Like if its places have a good PR, and a lot of companies go there, so there is more companies that come there as well. It's something like chill.
Fair
But
enough.
yes, but
It was just a little curiosity I had.
Look, the
yes,
thing
but
is,
anyway,
the reason
if we will accord, wait,
Clement, go first.
okay, I just want to finish it. There was like a time when there was a big difference between the GDP and GNP. Gross national,
Okay,
there's
fair enough.
a gross domestic product and gross national product. The difference between GDP and GNP is that in gross domestic product, GDP is recording only what happens in the country. And GNP records only what happens with the nationals of the country, even if they're outside of the nation.
Okay. Now,
Yes.
Jalil.
Okay, first of all, let me. I have something to add on Ireland. We mentioned Macedonia, etc. The thing is, I don't think Ireland can be called a tax haven because they don't have the kind of laws that can prevent companies from getting information on you, etc. I think what Ireland is known for best is being one of those countries in the EU with the best tax codes, one of the easier tax codes, and one of the lower tax codes in the EU, not
Okay.
Europe as a whole, but in the EU. Because if you look at the world, Panama has a 0% tax rate. I mean, if you saw the Panama leaks, you can find
Yes,
out
yes,
that
yes.
a lot of I mean, I don't know if you have followed the story, but our prime minister just got indicted for putting all his money there. And the second thing,
Wait a second.
the
I need to take a charger
the
to charge my notebook. Wait a second, okay?
Okay. Well, I'll hold up for a second. I'll put Clement here on mute, and we'll continue. Jalil,
by
so
the
now that we have a moment, we'll do what we did before. Tell us a bit about
yeah.
your views, your economic views.
Okay, listen, look, my views are very simple. Thing is, I've studied economics, politics, sociology, everything together. All right, and when you're studying anything, for example, let's take sociology or politics. People or subjects, they tend to have different tribal groups or individual subunits of a whole larger category, all right, which organizes the word, which can be known as the different schools of thoughts, like the Chicago school of thought, the Austrian school of thought, or the Keynesian school. All right,
Okay,
the
I'm here.
thing is, all
Okay.
these schools are known for their collectivity. All right, the thing I find with the Austrian school is that the gold standard of its decentralization, and the fact that they believe that real production is that of things that people demand. People don't demand Scud missiles and cruise missiles, you know uh, cheap virtual reality video games. That's what people demand. So
Okay.
real entrepreneurship is that.
Yes.
Okay. So now
That's why I
that was
like
that.
that's why I like Austrian economics. That's it. Simple as
Jalil,
that.
now you can bring it back to the point you were making about Ireland.
Yes. The
Yeah.
question
And
with the taxes.
I,
Look,
I have I have a question for
eventually
you.
we, yes, sure,
You were talking about GNP and GDP. One of
yes.
them is higher. One of them is higher. Which one is higher?
The higher one was GDP. For a
Okay.
time,
So
GDP was way higher than
okay.
GNP. It's
So
proved
that
one.
that problem is still prevalent in my country because the higher one is 1.06 trillion, but the lower one is for 400 billion. What does
Yes.
that mean?
Which
That
one is
means that
higher? Which one is lower?
let me tell you. Let me tell you. I'm already there. Okay, GDP is 1.060 trillion dollars, and PPP GDP PPP is 1.06 trillion, and GDP nominal is 304.4 billion.
I'm sorry, Jalil. Would you mind explaining to the viewers what exactly what those acronyms means?
Okay, that's what
Okay,
exactly I wanted to explain. Uh,
purchasing power parity and the nominal is the one. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead, Clement.
Well, this, yes, there is the difference between nominal and PPP. PPP is like the real purchasing power. I mean, it's
Yeah.
adjusted to inflation and adjusted to local taste. Because, for example, rice in China is something more valuable than rice in, I don't know, Russia, let's say,
Fair enough.
as far
Okay.
as I know.
Sorry, I just
So
want to make
it's
sure everyone.
adjusted to tastes and adjusted to inflation.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think another thing is that he mentioned that GDP and GNP are becoming closer together. Like before, a long time ago, there was a huge difference. GNP was in the trillions, and GDP was in only billions. And in the Western world, this problem is not prevalent anymore. But in third world countries such as mine, this problem is still prevalent, and I'll
Wait,
tell
so
you
which
why.
one is bigger, the GDP or GNP?
The GNP is over $1 trillion.
And the GDP is way low, right?
Yeah, not too low. It's 350 billion.
If so, the GNP, if the GNP is higher, it means that there is a lot of wealthy Pakistanis that live outside the country,
Exactly,
basically.
exactly, exactly.
There is a really, really rich Pakistani diaspora.
Yeah, there's a
Actually,
huge
it's true.
diaspora.
That actually is true. There is a lot of famous rich Pakistanis outside of Pakistan. It's one of
Yeah, that goes back to I think 100 years ago because after independence, India wasn't at very good terms with the United Kingdom, but Pakistan was. India was really
yes,
mad that they gave the Muslims their own country. So Pakistanis invested a lot of their money there rather than the new country. Like
yes.
for
Also, it's
example,
about investment. Yes, it's true. It's not only
yeah,
investment, but only
yeah,
also related to the investment outside of the country.
exactly, exactly. And I'll tell you one more thing. Like now, investment in Pakistan is coming through now. In the last 6 7 months, I've seen after the Chinese deal, investment has started coming through, and the GDP, even the domestic product, has been increasing, and the gap has been closing. So
It's good.
the main, yeah, that's good. But so the main problem is that GNP and GDP closes down when domestic investment becomes higher.
Depends on the country, depends on the situation. For example, the GNP of Ireland is way lower. Was way lower, sorry, was way lower than GDP.
Was. Yeah.
Yes, was. I will tell you the story. Now I will tell the story, and I want to say something important. When we say the name, when we say investment, we need to differentiate between two kinds of investment: real investment and financial investment. Financial
Yeah.
investment is like hot air. If there is no real investment in something real like factories, like construction, like anything else, the financial investment is speculations. Now you have financial investment, tomorrow they will go somewhere else. And that's one of the
Yeah.
main points with Ireland. Ireland is basically got huge amount of financial inflows, but there is not so many, there is not a lot of real inflows of real capital formation. There is not lot no there's not a lot real capital formation in Ireland. Capital formation, I mean, for our listeners, it's basically like building building factories, constructing buildings, and etc.
Yeah,
etc.
infrastructure basically. Exactly.
Infrastructure, factories,
Yeah.
anything else. Businesses.
You know what? I think we should, Clement. I would really like to know your views on the infrastructure plan that Trump proposed. I mean, first of all, let's get this through the fact that it is there. We hardly have 6 or 7% chance that his infrastructure plan will even be approved by Congress, considering that at least 80% of the Congress doesn't even like what he's proposing. But his infrastructure program worth $150 billion in his first year. How do you think that's going to work out?
If it will be implemented, it will be, of course, important for some reasons. The first reason, we speak about infrastructure proper. The American infrastructure is in really bad shape currently.
Yeah,
I'm not living in the US, but I'm always hearing about it.
yeah. D minus. It gets a grade of D minus. Boys, just give me 1 minute. I'll be right back. I
Okay,
have to get
sure.
the charge. I have to get the charger as well. Until then, you guys continue.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, that's fair enough. I'm going to put Jalil on mute again, and we'll continue. So, you were saying you're a big fan of MMT, is that correct?
I am in some sort, I like MMT, yes. I mean, I'm post-Keynesian, so I have disagreements, but yes, I like MMT. Except I don't like the
That's,
job guarantee plan, but I like MMT.
and why would you not like the job guarantee plan?
Because it will become a bureaucratic mess.
Well,
I mean,
yes.
but there is some time conditions you have to basically give. In theory, it's a beautiful plan. The problem with this plan is basically that you have to find a work for person, so it will be not for profit. So it will be something that he like to do and something that needed. In order to achieve all these plans, you need to basically plan a lot. It's a lot of planning. Planning requires bureaucracy. And unless you are making a really serious bureaucracy, even with computerization, everything, it still will have a lot of people to do this. It will become a mess. And as I know from experience, for my country in Israel, we actually have an when we go there is like the army. People have to go to army for 3 years. The guys for 3 years and girls for 2 years. So you can go to the army or you can go to help charities, and everything is good. But when people come to charities, the charities say we don't need so much people. We better the government will give us more money for food or more money for shelters or whatever else, but we don't need so much people here, especially if they're not
Fair enough.
specialized in something. So I see it as it will become a mess. It will basically will lower the trust of the people on the state. And I prefer more indirect market-based solutions with government intervention. Of course, with government intervention, but it should be based on stimuli, on, on incentives, not on ad hoc job creation.
Sorry, you lost connection there. Go again.
Hey, I
Come
had a
again.
problem.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hey,
Yeah, no, you
yeah.
just you said add and then the thing went. Can you say it again?
What before? What I said before? I said something after. I mean, I am for government intervention, but in the end, it still should be in a framework of capitalist incentive system.
That's fair
I
enough. Okay.
Fair enough. I have a counterpoint to that. I think yeah, all of us agree that too much government spending is not a good thing. But I just want to make a case point for not the Great Recession, the recession of 2008 and 9. Now, the governments bailed out the big corporations, all right,
yes,
and
yes,
they
true.
did not do they didn't do anything for the people.
Of
A lot
course,
of people, a lot of people lost their houses and everything.
yes.
So, don't you think if the government had Obama, one of my main criticisms of Obama is that his stimulus package was too
Of
corporate
course,
centrist. All right.
of
If
course.
his if his stimulus package had included working class people, middle class people who had suffered under the recession,
I will tell
then
you
the
more.
yeah, then the economy would have become better. Yeah,
The
go ahead.
marginal propensity to spend, I will explain it. Marginal propensity to spend is how much out of a newly accepted income the person will spend. Of poor people is way higher than of rich people. Rich people spend way less on consumption than poor people from their income. It's known fact.
Yeah,
Except in the mainstream economics when they basically model all people as if they have the same tastes, as if they have the same propensity to consume, as basically we are all clones of one, as we are like a big, we're all clones with the same
yeah,
taste, like robots, with everything identical. So except mainstream economists, everyone knows that rich people spend less on consumption than poor people. And when we
exactly.
have a crisis, and a crisis caused by lack of demand, aggregate demand in the economy, the best way to help the economy is to help the poor and the middle class, the working class and the middle class. And I agree with you.
Yes,
But I agree with you. For example, instead of bailing out the banks, and as we know, by the way, there is the FDIC, right? FDIC. So all the deposits of people guaranteed anyway. It's not a
yeah,
problem, you know. So if we have FDIC and we have all people deposits guaranteed, no matter if the bank go bankrupt or not, the way
yeah.
better
The
plan
government,
was, let's assume if even we want to bail out, let's bail out all the people with the mortgages. Why the government should pay all the mortgages of the people? Why
yeah,
not? Why not pay for people private debt, which
exactly, exactly.
basically
A good
people are
example.
currently in our. I just want to finish this
Yeah,
second.
yeah, sure, sure.
Is people basically indebted their life
Yeah.
crazy likely so indebted. So it will be great if the government will bail out the people instead of big financial corporations. It's true.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, after we can talk about a great example of this would be Roosevelt's New Deal after World War II,
Yes.
where the stimulus package that he presented on the people. It was focused on putting people back to work after the war.
Yes, of course.
It also included the Marshall Plan, and I think that's why that was a golden age. The 50s, 60s, 70s were a golden age for American consumerism because the stimulus packages were all directed towards people who would spend more. Corporations are not
Of
going to
course.
spend more on other
Especially
corporations.
corporations, here we speak about General Motors and other corporations. These corporations use this money in order to outsource the jobs from United States to another countries.
Yeah,
Even if we speak about automation, okay? If we speak about automation, let's assume they will build automated factory. It's actually important if they build it in America or in China. Why? Because United States can always create more dollars, but it cannot create more foreign currency. And foreign currency is vital
yeah,
in trade. So the arguments about automations will take jobs anyway is not important here. If the corporations use this
no,
money in
yeah.
order to outsource themselves out, they basically, they basically really fuck the people. I'm sorry for my language. And they fuck the taxpayers, they
Oh.
fuck the government, they fuck everyone.
Exactly, exactly. I completely agree with you. And another issue that I really want to touch base on with you is I think Thomas would love to contribute to this because it's his continent.
Yes.
Thomas, Thomas, are you with us?
Who?
Yeah,
Sovas,
are you with us?
Sovas,
Who's
Sovas.
Thomas?
Thomas, yeah. Savas, are you with us?
Oh yeah, I'm here.
All right, Savas. We were talking about me and you. We were talking about Brexit. So I was wondering if Savas, if you would like to tell us, is it possible that given that Great Britain has only 2 years to negotiate a Brexit deal, is it Is it possible that France and Germany and everyone in Brussels might try to get, get them to sign a bad deal so that the economy suffers? Because I'm pretty sure they would love to get revenge on the British, especially with
Well,
Macron in office.
well, first of all, I'm the moderator, so I shouldn't be too engaged. But I personally don't think that a deal will be struck. I don't think that Britain will sign a bad deal. I think Britain would sooner weather a lack of a deal than a bad deal. That being said, I am not the
So,
Prime
Clement,
Minister of the United
what
Kingdom
about you?
You
What
can
do
or
you
ask me. You
President
can
of
ask me.
France or Chancellor of Germany or head of the European Commission. So I can't really tell you how this is going to play out.
Yeah.
But yes,
Yeah,
Clement,
but we,
what would your
yeah,
take on that?
I want to say actually was supporting Brexit, and because I hate the European Union. Okay, it's my personal view because actually the Eurozone is a dystopia for its people, for the countries except Germany, which basically built its Fourth Reich. We're speaking about this. The European Union is actually its Fourth Reich of the Germany, without even
Well,
one bullet shot.
That's that now, like,
It's an achievement
forthright.
without even one bullet shot. It's amazing, actually, how it's work. You know, as Thatcher said, I like Germany so much, so I prefer 4 Germanys instead of 2. Yes. So basically,
I mean,
yes, yes.
I think this fourth Reich was much better than the third one because this time they actually got Britain. They conquered Britain for its
Yes. Now they
20
actually
years
pretend they care.
before.
Now they actually
20,
pretend they care.
yeah.
Well, of course, the Fourth Reich is better than the third Reich. Yes.
Well, yeah, because they were not. Yeah, they conquered the British Isles for at least 20 years before they realized what Merkel's plan was.
The Brits
But
like
I
their
think
independence.
that
A little bit too much.
a bit too much. Yeah,
Well, only their independence.
only their
Yes.
independence. Yeah, it's
The Brits.
if it's
You saw Yes Minister? Someone saw here Yes Minister?
Yes, Prime Minister.
With the
Yes, right.
sausages. Well, the Brits will make their sausages worse quality than the European Union. That's why they left.
yeah.
So of course I'm kidding, but you know, Yes Minister
Sure.
is a great, awesome, serious.
Oh,
Yes.
look.
Huh?
I mean, Britain's only 2 great gifts to the world was Adam Smith and, British comedy.
Yes, actually,
Yeah.
I like a lot of British series. I watch a lot of them.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
quite popular around the
I-
world, you know.
I prefer British comedy compared to American. A lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more
I know,
interesting.
I don't
Anyway,
find
we're
American
speaking-
comedy to be very witty. But anyway, back to the conversation.
Yes,
Yeah.
Brexit. If we speak about Brexit, I support
Brexit.
Brexit, and I think that actually, basically, it's important that the parliament or the people, depends on the country, will be more sovereign than any transnational organization. If we're speaking about this clearly, no matter if I like the policy of the transnational organization or not, I think the people or directly or to the parliament have to be more sovereign than this. But if you speak about European Union policies, they are basically in some sense, they're worse than the policies that even the Republicans in America want to impose. I'm not speaking, of course, on the environment because there's, you need to try hard to be worse on the environment than Republicans in the United States. But if we're
That's going to
speaking,
be hard.
huh?
That's going to be hard. Yeah, you're right.
It's going to be hard. You have to be creative. But if we're speaking about the neoliberal front, there are basically some things are worse. Like if you speak about the Maastricht Treaty, which forced something like maximum of 3% of GDP budget deficits, which we see how it's harmed of Italy, Greece, and other countries. As we see how basically these institutions, when there was problem for Germany and France in 2002, and they had to basically have big budget deficits, the European Union tried to stop them, but they said if you try to stop us, we will stop you first.
Yeah, exactly.
But when it's about Greece, let's fuck them so hard. That's
Yeah,
how Germany.
I was
Yes.
completely against. I was completely against the austerity measures that Merkel took, and also another thing I would like to add. I supported Brexit as well. I mean, as an outsider, but my reasons were a bit different. My reasons were that first of all, the European Union was becoming too strong, and the link between the European Union and NATO is scary, to be quite honest.
Yes, it actually
And
started to become a bureaucracy, but not in the sense of,
exactly,
like bureaucrats in
yeah,
the government. It's actually where the bureau is the crazy, the rulers of they
exactly.
rule the politicians, not vice versa.
And the European if you look at the code of the European Union, it's a very Kafkaesque code. It's like
Yes.
McCarthyism all over again, and they are very dystopic. You are completely correct on that. And a question, Clement. Do you think that the EU is kind of a confederacy, or is it even stronger than a confederacy? Because in a confederacy, states would hold at least 95% of their rights, but a determination. But do you think the EU is more of a kind of a United States type situation, or a confederacy type of situation?
Even speaking about federal or confederate,
Yeah,
I will say something. I
centralized.
will say something. Something like this: in confederacy or federalism, in federalism or confederalism, there is at least
Yeah,
something important. The
exactly.
strong,
Yeah.
the strong care about the weak. Here, the weak have to care about the strong. It's not a confederacy or federation. It's actually Germany and its vassals.
Exactly, exactly.
It's a
And to
small
be honest,
circle.
I am
Germany.
very critical of Merkel, and I'm surprised that she is still ahead in the polls. I hope she loses. I swear to God, I hope she loses. I want her to lose because this this has gone on for too long, and I think the EU needs to. I think Le Pen was right when in her manifesto. I mean, I disagreed with Le Pen on almost everything. She was just a populist with no real proper agenda, but she was right when she said that we need to renegotiate the EU treaty,
Of
or
course.
else we should just leave because it's getting too strong, and it's getting too it's becoming a global hegemony. Because
Yes, yes.
I'm glad Trump is challenging it. I'm glad
Yes, so
Trump is challenging.
I said, Europe have to decide once and for all, or it become United States of Europe. And in this case,
Yeah, exactly.
it's really care about the countries there, not only about Germany, but about other countries there. It's really care about
Okay,
them.
if they wanna become the United States of Europe, they can, but they have to stop pretending that, like, they give each other self determination. They don't.
Yes,
The EU,
in this case, it's not countries, it's states. And all the states should care
yeah,
about each other. It shouldn't be
each
like,
other exactly
yes,
the way they
or
treated Greece.
they should, or
Yeah,
the EU should dissolve. And something else should be
yeah,
rebuilt,
dissolve.
like,
No,
cooperation treaties or whatever else. But it
yeah,
shouldn't be like,
yeah, a trade
like
corporation. Make a trade corporation or an economic union. But
yes, it shouldn't be a Kapka government. I
yeah,
can't say anything else. It's a Kapka government.
I
What's
mean, I
happening
can
in the
tell
European
you,
Union?
I can tell you already. The next victim of the eurozone will be either Portugal or Spain, because
Yes, yes.
their economies have been lagging for the last decade.
Of course. Why? Because Germany basically exports to other countries because the euro is too strong for other countries. But for Germany, the euro is so cheap.
Yeah, exactly.
It's cheap. They can export. They export it, and when they export a lot of things, they actually export. They still in demand from other countries, and because
exactly.
of this, there is unemployment, and they can't even have normal interest rate policies, capital control policies because of the EU agreements, and they can have trade policies.
Yeah,
For example, I'm not really for free trade. I'm not for closed trade, but countries have to regulate trade and capital flows because
yeah,
It's giving them independence, sovereignty.
Yeah.
Sovereignty. If you
In
force
terms of
them, yes. If
yeah,
you force, let's say, just if you force them free movement of capital, free movement of goods, and free movement of people, you have to create a country which cares about it, which has solidarity. Without
uh,
it, it's Kafkan government.
yeah, it's a Kafkan government, and you know this disillusion that the U. I don't think that the Great Britain left just because of Muslim immigration. I think it was immigration from countries like Poland, etc. as well. Also played a huge role because uh, I think the Polish are in huge diaspora in Great Britain, aren't they?
Yes, there's huge
So
policy diaspora in Britain.
yeah. So you know this idea that this Brexit was racist or all that. It's the most stupid nonsense I've ever heard, to be
I will
honest.
tell you,
Because
the problem is mass migration. Mass migration to a nation state is always a
massively,
problem.
exactly. And look, what are they doing now? They're telling Serbia, Hungary, and Czech Republic that if they do not take their quota of refugees, they're going to be penalized. What kind of a transnational union does that?
Yes, of
This
course.
is something that I
Especially
don't
as
think that
you are, no,
this
you
is
live in Pakistan. It's okay to say it right
yeah
here. And you know
yeah
how, like conservative, rural Pakistani think. And you
yeah
see that these values clash with European values. I mean,
yeah
for you, European people, it's like not politically correct to say, but we know that these values are so different. So of course there will be serious clash when people like
exactly
rural
exactly
Pakistanis come there. I mean, the problem is these refugees. If all these refugees being, people from upper classes like yourself, it may
yeah.
be problem. Mass migration of highly skilled people is a problem, but at least you can create social cohesiveness because there is some kind of shared values. But when we speak
Exactly.
about rural population from Muslim countries, as you know, in every rural
No,
population is
that never
considered.
works. Never works. Never works. How do you expect some farmer from Punjab here in Pakistan to start working in Belgium or Brussels or Netherlands? Impossible. Look, here's the thing. Look, I'm only half Pakistani.
Yes, and half are
So
Arab, right?
no, not Arab. I'm
Tunisia, I think.
half. No, half French Algerian.
Ah,
I'm
French Algeria.
I'm a French Algerian, yeah.
Ah, okay.
Not Arab Algerian, French Algerian.
Ah, okay. Sorry.
Okay. So if I go, of course I'm not going to go to Europe anytime soon.
Yes.
I might go in a few years, but for this business or something else. But when I go, I will know what I'll be doing because I spent 4 years in the EU.
Hmm.
I spent a year in Algiers. Algiers is a lot like a European city. It's a
Hmm.
coastal city and it's mostly a tourist city. So mass immigration is bad. I don't think any of us here says that there should be no immigration.
Of course
I don't
not.
think no, right? So
No.
all we're saying is, look, needs to be controlled, and this is not about racism or anything else. It's basically about the fact, look, you idiots, the only reason that these rich people don't care about these rich people don't care about the refugees. All they care about is the cheap labor coming into their
Of
countries.
course. But this cheap
That's the
labor is hurting the working class. In the end, is hurting the country
exactly
because first of all, because when also many people come, you can't assimilate them by soft policies.
you know,
I mean, of
exactly.
course, maybe you
No,
can,
not at
if you
all.
will be like really super strict assimilation policies, which are currently are, are not politically correct, and nobody in the moderate spectrum will ever apply them on people, strict on assimilation policies. And on the extreme factor, if you speak about right wing, they don't care about assimilation; they care about racial policies in Europe. So nobody will do it anyway. So when people come,
Yeah.
and when people come,
And
as we say,
we That I have to expand on your point that you cannot have soft policies. You're completely correct. That's the problem in the UK policies about assimilation. What happens is there's a suburb where only Indians live. There's a suburb where only Polish people live. This does not happen in the United
Ghettoization.
States.
Ghettoization.
Yeah,
In United
yeah,
States, there's also ghettoization, but
exactly.
it's more because, at least until recently, I now I see trends for multicultures, but recently the model was melting pot, not salad
Exactly.
bowl, like they like it now. So it
This
was,
this is
yes,
look.
yes, continue.
If you look at the Islamic population in Europe, it's the most radicalized in the Western world. If you look at that of America, I mean, I saw recent stats. At least 60% of them agree with homosexual marriage, which is a surprise to
Yes.
me. Muslims in America, Canada, and Australia, these three places I think are liberal, but in Europe, they are very radicalized. I think even this generation of Muslims in Europe is even more radicalized compared to the last one. And
Yes,
I think,
actually, yes. It's really
yes,
interesting
exactly.
because the first immigrants came secular. I mean, I'm not saying
Yeah.
there was atheist. I mean, but okay, there is a Quran. There is maybe I go
There's
to
the Quran, there's the
sometimes to
Torah.
mosque, in the holidays or whatever. But actually, it was secular people.
Yeah,
Maybe believe in
exactly.
God, but they were secular. But you see now, two generations later, and you get Wahhabis there suddenly.
And I despise Theresa May for the same thing. And this is something I'm gonna sound harsh, but I'm sorry, but the UK is not doing enough to fight terrorism, and immigration is not the only problem with terrorism. The main problem with terrorism, I will have to agree with Jeremy Corbyn here. He said it correct. Saudi Arabia is the greatest enemy.
Saudi
Saudi
Arabia
Arabia.
is a great partner, but as we know, and we have to, as the European Union, have to understand,
Yeah.
and the Western world have to understand,
Yeah.
if you don't go in the way of assimilation,
There
strong
is no.
emphasis on assimilation, in the end, it's ending up in Western world case on pseudo-scientific racial ideologies like Nazis.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. That's why the far right bubble was created last year,
Yes,
and
if
it's going to get worse if Merkel stays in power.
Yes, if you are not caring about culture, in the end, people start caring about race, and it's way more dangerous and it's horrible when people start to
Look,
care about race.
look. Here's the thing. I'm
Culture, I
sure.
speak about values and social convention. I'm speaking about if you eat kebab or hamburger. When I speak culture, I'm not
Yeah,
speaking about kebab or hamburger. I'm speaking about more fundamental things.
yeah.
You understand, right?
Completely normal. Yeah, I understand. Completely understand, and I completely agree with you. Look, if someone like me wanted to immigrate, for example, to some place like I want to go to the UK. Okay, if I want to go to Dublin, why would I want to go there? Because I find that
I don't know.
I
I don't know anyone who want to go to Dublin.
because stop for Sovas. Okay, so the reason I would go there is because I like their culture. I would want to assimilate. I would not
Yes,
want to go. I would not want to go there so that I can live in my own little bubble. If I want
yes,
to
of
live in
course.
my own little bubble, I will stay in my own country.
Yes,
Or you could go
of
to
course.
England.
Exactly.
That's why we're not going to England.
You could just go move to Luton Town. I mean, it's like Lahore, but with more
I
people.
think that the capital of Pakistan is Islamabad, right? On
Yeah, Islamabad.
mistake.
It's a beautiful city. It's a
I guess
beautiful city.
people in Islamabad are more secular than people in some places in
Yeah,
London. Pakistan is
exactly,
in London.
exactly. Dude,
Aye.
like, yeah, you're completely correct. Islamabad, at least, um, in Islamabad, the thing with Islamabad is it's a federally administered territory, so it's not part of any province. So it has the most liberal rules in the world. I don't think there's any place more liberal than Islamabad. You have to visit to understand it. There are too many
Yes,
foreigners there, but it's okay. I don't mind them. I don't mind them. I don't mind them, to be honest. I
Uh,
actually like them.
In what
Yeah,
way is it more liberal? Like,
So as the thing is, this city was built in 1973 by Bhutto, who was a socialist. So he built this city as the
a
hub for the
refuge for all the
Muslim world.
seculars. Refuge for all the seculars.
So the people who went to live there at the beginning were very rich people, and their children grew up in foreign countries and came back here. So a lot of them are liberals, a lot of them are faggots, and a lot of them are other things as well. Homosexual. I'm sorry for the politically incorrect term. I am sorry. I am not homophobic. I am not homophobic.
yeah.
No, it's okay. We
Go
don't
on,
turn
like,
on
for
for
example, like in there,
Yeah.
for example, what's, for example, policy on abortion, homosexuality, drinking, sex before marriage, stuff like that? How is it treated?
So look, sex before marriage is a normal thing anywhere in the world.
Yes, you just don't need to say it, but everyone knows that people do
Well,
it.
Yeah,
So
but
what's
Like
yeah,
here in our
we know that
village.
in other places it's not as well respected.
I mean, I can just a little bit speak.
he's right. He's right. Sovas is right. I would like to expand on his point.
That's true.
It's not well respected. So if in a city like Karachi, where people are more conservative, their premarital relationships will not be accepted. But in Islamabad or in my city, they are accepted. So that's the difference. So and Islamabad is even for 100 times more liberal than even my city. So
So if I landed there tomorrow and I
yeah,
decided to go get
To
a
pop
drink,
up.
well,
go
imagining
to
I don't
the
get executed on the spot, like if I landed there, would I be able to get a drink, for example?
go to the Marriott. Yeah, go to the
Nice.
Marriott. There's Serena. Go to dude. It's 20% of the people living there are foreigners, so you can't ban alcohol for those people.
Nice.
So you can't ban it. That's why it's a federally
Administrative.
administered territory. It's not a province.
Okay.
But,
Fair enough.
so yeah. So anyways, boys, let's end the debate here.
Fair enough.
I think this is
It's interesting. It's interesting to talk here like this.
Yeah, we never debate. Honest.
we will definitely do this again someday.
Oh,
my
gotcha.
friends.
I'd love to bring you
Sure.
everyone on again.
And I think this is the first time in history that a Catholic, a Jew, and a Muslim have come on Google Hangouts together.
Actually,
So,
it's hilarious.
Anyway,
so we
fair
are
enough.
making history.
Everyone want to make
So
their
we
closing statements.
This was a great debate. Clement, I can't wait for your first article, and we're really glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
Clement, your final words?
Yes, I was really enjoying, and actually it was not debate, it was discussion more. It was
Yeah,
more of discussion because we are all leftists in the end, right?
Yeah, exactly.
We agree with each other, but we actually should repeat it again. It will be amazing.
Yeah, we will definitely do this again. We will definitely do this again.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for having. I would like to thank you both for coming on. I thought I had a great time,
Yeah, that-
and we will
Thank you,
absolutely
boys.
have to do this again.
Of course.
Absolutely.
And we'll call that now the end of the roundtable debate.